Late video. Yes, today we're going to be having a look at the DC Collectibles Batman the Animated Series, figure number 41. This is classic Batgirl. Just to clarify, the reasoning for the intro like that is because I've had this figure for a while. I just never got around to reviewing her. So yeah, she's a little on the late side. Look at that go. Let's take the tape measure and figure how tall classic Batgirl is. She's a roughly 5 1/4 inch tall figure. She comes with accessories. She of course comes with as the figure, and she comes with a display base. Let's look at that first. The display base is the tried and true front, side, or 3/4 front, side, and 3/4 back turnaround display stand. We've seen these with all the figures. Classic Batgirl is no exception. Looks good. I must say, to the credit of DC Collectibles, they've gone the route now of the spring hinge clip as opposed to that other clip that I just found wasn't working, wasn't cutting it for the figures themselves. These are a little bit trickier because there's that spring there, but you almost have to hold the side in order to pull it back, because if you try pulling it on its own, you usually move it in the process of it. It's good and tight. It doesn't seem to be sliding all over the place. So again, I hope that they move forward to using these as their substitute to the ones that they were using before. These just work a whole lot better. Let's move it to the side. Comes, like I said, with a whole bunch of hands. Accessory-wise, the only thing she really comes with is a classic Batgirl Batarang, or just a Batarang, just cast in black plastic. Not a whole lot happening here. She doesn't come with a grapple gun. She doesn't come with any other variation to the Batarang, maybe something with a rope. Just comes with a Batarang. She also comes with a series of interchangeable hands, which to be expected. That's what figures, certainly from the Batman Animated Series line, do come with. A plethora, a substantial amount of interchangeable hands. We can kind of go through each one of these very quickly. A lot of them are just gripping hands of various left and right configurations. Again, gripping hands. They lend themselves to the idea that they should be holding more than just simply the Batarang, but ultimately that's the only accessory that you get. Again, a gripping hand. Not quite a Batarang hand, but a gripping hand nonetheless. And a couple of relaxed hands. I've got one currently in the socket. I still want to talk about that in a second. And a pair of closed fists. And kind of ones sort of for holding the Batarang, but you can see that they gave her almost like a, if I can hold on to it, because my hands, I've got giant hands. It looks as if it's supposed to hold the Batarang. At the very least, there's only really the ledge in between. Let me just grab the Batarang to show you. There's really only just a little bit of gap between the finger and the thumb. I suppose you could get the fingers in between there, but they really have not given nearly enough clearance. I mean, there's just that and that alone. That's not enough to appease anybody. It really does look like it should have been opened a little bit more. There should have been a slot actually in there. Maybe just the molding didn't catch it. There are your hands. Now, I want to talk about this, and far be it for me to get into some substantial rant about this, but the one continuing miss that these figures unfortunately suffer from is changing out the hands. You may be screaming right now, hey, you've left a considerable peg visible from the socket of the forearm right down to the hand, and the hands are barely in place. You would be absolutely correct. I made the foolish mistake of taking one of the hands out. You know what? That's what you do as somebody who reviews and collects figures. You probably will want to change the hands out at any given point. I just want to bring your attention to the ongoing issue. They use extremely small pegs. What's the workaround to that? There is, sadly, no workaround. It means, however, the small nature of the pegs and the extremely tight nature of the hole, it's incredibly difficult to get that hand in place. Part of you, of course, wants to apply as much pressure as you possibly can, but keeping in mind as well, there's a little ledge. I'm going to grab another hand so I can show you here. There's, of course, that little ledge right there that it has to get by. It's the one stopping point. It's like the wall. It's the Night's Watch wall right there. Once you get past that, the walkers are free to take over the land. Ultimately, though, you want to push as much as you can to get it past that point. But the one thing I'm worried about is obviously breaking the peg. You then may think to yourself, well, what if you just twisted it? Well, the only problem is if you catch it on itself and you start twisting it, you eventually just start developing stress marks. And then ultimately, you may break that peg right off. I can't, again, think of a workaround to this, but these peg hands, it almost makes me think to myself, I want to get one hand in place, commit to it, marry it, settle down, maybe have smaller little hands, and just call it a life. That's what I want to do. Because pegging this in place is so difficult. I don't want to do this very often at all. The hands sit ultimately really loose as a result of it, and I'm disappointed, and it makes me sad. As sad as a plastic figure could make an older gentleman who is reviewing it for social media. It's just disappointing that these pegs continue to be an issue. Other than that, I would have loved the figure, but the hands really need to considerably be worked on, and I only wish I could find a solution to the problem, because those pegs are way too small. If you pick up figures like this yourself, let me know in the comments section if you have the same angst and frustrations that this poor chap has had trying to get these blasted hands in place. Okay, I'm going to give you some warning now. These hands are, you know what? We're taking the hands out. I know they're going to fall off. Hey, she's got no hands. I know she has no hands. Looking at the rest of the figure, I'm just exhausted now. I feel like I could take a nap. Looking at the rest of the figure, she's pretty good, actually. We've already looked at the New Batman Adventures Batgirl, which she's somewhere. I'm not really certain where I put her. But this is classic Batgirl. This is kind of her first appearance. She's wearing now a gray outfit rather than the black outfit that she gets later on. Black and blue outfit. But here we have basically like a full head, or neck rather, to boot. Gray outfit with a little yellow Batgirl logo. Paint for the most part is pretty clean. I find one problem with, it seems, any of the Batman animated series figures from DC Collectibles. This black, anytime is used on a figure, develops scratches immediately. In fact, very little was done to this figure. It wasn't put away in storage or anything like that. Taking her out of packaging, I already noticed like the plastic, at least the area around the head, seems like it's just got some of these little imperfections and scratches to it. I've done so very little to the figure. Face sculpt is good. She's a little muddy. The flesh tone is a little on the muddy side, especially around the areas of her eyes. The opened areas of her mask seems to be the muddiest. At least she's got painted in pupils, but I do feel like the skin tone looks rather dirty rather than being clean and refreshing. The hair, of course, is sticking out from the back, one of the design elements for this particular Batgirl, and she's got a smaller cape, which is a softer plastic. At least, at the very least, the interior is painted in black, the exterior painted in blue, which so happens to also match the blue of the cowl and the handless gloves and the feet installed boots. Luckily, I don't have to change out the feet. Those feet are already in place. Also digging the Bat utility belt, the Batgirl utility belt. Again, yellow is a questionable thing to be painting over top of figures, other than a few little scratches and hiccups. Otherwise, the plastic, the yellow is decent. It's passable. It could be better, but at the very least, it's passable. It's not really, again, much I could say negatively about the figure. She's just kind of a middle of the mark. I would not say she's one of the better outings from DC Collectibles, but she's certainly not one of the worst either. I'd say I would definitely take this figure, say, over top of, instead of, say, for example, like a Talia or a Zatanna. I found those figures were a little more on the disappointing side. Batgirl's got good elements to it, but she's just a little, kind of a little muddy, and don't like, again, the pegs on those hands. But that's across the board for all the figures, really. Female variety. Posability, her head rotates all the way around. Head hinges up and down, technically, and somewhat left to right. The arms hinge outward. Well, you can rotate the arms all the way around. It's a little stuck because you have to move it around the cape area. Bend at the elbow. Rotation on the forearm. I already noticed that the elbows here are loose. Again, that makes me so sad. Loose on the elbows. Legs relatively stiff. That's good. Legs split out. She does have a bend at the knee, which for some reason this one knee is a little on the tighter side, but that I would take that over a loose knee. And then she also has a hinge in the foot. You also rotate the feet slightly as well. I suppose for final looks, we should probably try to get some hands, get some semblance of anatomy in place here. I'm just gonna ballpark it. I'm just gonna plug a couple of hands in place. Ugh, these are just such a pain in the butt. Ugh. Still, yeah, there's a big gap happening right there. And we'll go ahead and put the other hand in place. Again, I have absolutely no idea what I would do to fix the problem with the hands, but I can tell you, as somebody that's picking these up on a regular basis, may not always review them right away, but as somebody who picks them up on a regular basis, I will say, at least from females, the hands are a nightmare to put into place. Having collected enough of these in my day, I feel I do offer a valid and good argument as to some of the problems that these figures continue to face. To the credit of DC Collectibles, the sculpts and paints have been all around pretty good on a lot of these figures, and I think they have a lot more hits than they do have misses. Still, despite all that, there are ongoing frustrations that I find I experience with these particular figures. One being the stand. You can never really get the figures to stand appropriately on them. Even these new swing spring clips that they have used for the waist, you do have to kind of move the figure slightly to the side so that they fit appropriately, especially if the figure has a cape. It so happens that classic Batgirl has a cape. But the biggest and the ongoing issues that I have with these particular figures, and it more sits with the female figures than it does with the males, is that they're really badly executed with the way that they handle the interchangeable hands. It's really no fault. I mean, how would you change out a hand other than just having a peg and a hole? But ultimately, it seems a lot easier on paper than what you can actually execute. Forcing the hands in place may ultimately break the peg. Twisting the hands into the sockets may also give you the same result. So you just sort of have to continue to push the hand in until eventually the socket says, okay, I'll have the hand. But that's the one thing that I would think that these figures need to kind of be worked on. It would be difficult to now say, let's go back to the drawing board, but maybe the workaround for these figures is that they should have been bigger to start off with. The male figures are of a decent enough size, but even if they had made those an inch taller and made the female figures an inch taller, the pegs would ultimately be a little bit bigger on the figures and may allow you a lot more of an easier time of actually changing out the hands. Because I find the hands are the one thing I don't look forward to doing, and maybe that may explain why I didn't have a look at Batgirl sooner. Batgirl is a decent enough figure in execution of paint and sculpt, but really is a disaster when it comes to changing out the hands, which again is not necessarily Batgirl's fault. It's really all the female figures that DC Collectibles are releasing under the Batman animated series and the new Batman Adventures banner. Batgirl should still be available in comic book stores should you wish to pick her up and add her to your existing collection. If you've managed to pick up her or any of the other female figures, let me know if you've had ongoing problems like myself with changing out the hands on these figures. It shouldn't be this difficult, I say to myself. And yet ultimately it is difficult. If you haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. There's a lot of good stuff happening on this channel. A lot of new videos on a regular basis, sometimes 2 or 3 videos a day. I know I do upload a fair bit of content versus the regular reviewers on YouTube, but what can I say? There's really a lot of things I like to cover. Make sure as well, above and beyond hitting that subscribe button, you head over to the main page and scroll down the section that says videos. See if there's anything that you may have missed that I have posted, and feel free to comment in those videos as well. More videos are going to be heading your way, so thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.